Hello everyone, and welcome back to DMG. Has this ever happened to you? You love the design and features of your 14-inch Dell Latitude, but you wish it could be a little smaller. Oh man, I sure do wish there was a small, thin, light laptop with all the features and the build quality of a 15-inch Dell Latitude, but in a much smaller form factor. You tried a modern, thin and light Dell laptop, but it just wasn't for you. I've tried Dell's new thin and light laptops, but there are almost no user serviceable parts in here. They're slow, they're terrible build quality, and the only thing you can replace is the battery. I'd rather have the laptops I dropped over this thing. If only Dell made a 12-inch laptop with the design and most of the features of a full-size Latitude E4200. Well, luckily for you, they did, and it's right here in front of me. Meet the Latitude E4200, the smallest classic Dell Latitude that I know of. And I'm calling it a classic Latitude because it really does feel like a miniature E6400. In fact, this was so small, when I took it out of the box, I thought it was a toy. And I still have trouble believing this is a functional laptop. Now, small laptops are no odd thing today. We see a lot of things this size, but this is from 2008. The fact that a nice laptop this tiny could be made like 15 plus years ago, well, it's pretty cool. And the ways they were able to miniaturize the components to fit are, well, they're fascinating. So today, we're taking a look inside and outside, of course, the Latitude E4200. Let's get right into it. I bought this little laptop on eBay a little while ago, thinking it might be the perfect bridge between modern thin and light laptops and classic repairability. It has the nice silver and black aesthetic of mid-2000s Latitudes, which makes it look like a tiny little scale model. But it is, in fact, quite a functional little laptop. You're given a full keyboard, the size of any other Latitude of the era, although it is missing the point stick in the middle. And if you like to use that, it's a little bit of a shame, and I feel myself missing it as well. You also don't get the buttons for the point stick. But the keyboard that is here is wonderfully tactile and surprisingly loud for such a small laptop. The screen folds almost 180 degrees, which is quite convenient if you need to do what I am doing here. As aforementioned, it's a nice tactile feeling keyboard with an alarmingly loud sound. It sounds like my 1998 Compaq Presario. That's actually exactly what this keyboard sounds like. And other Latitude keyboards are a lot quieter, but the feel of this keyboard is surprisingly good for a 12-inch laptop, especially considering its age. Now, sorry, I forgot to mention something else. The ambient light sensor is down here above the power button, which isn't that good because it picks up the light directly above you instead of more ambient light like the other Latitudes of this era do. Other Latitudes have the ambient light sensor right around here on the bezel. So if you buy one of these, I would recommend disabling that and never turning it back on, because your screen brightness will not be right, ever. Here is your second power button for the Latitude on function, and here is your primary power button. The Latitude on function just enables really quick connectivity to like company servers. It is not something I use, and it's something you actually have to install an expansion card in this laptop to use. Speaking of expansion cards, let's take a peek inside. Now this laptop is just held together with one screw and has this nice, easily accessible bay. It slides forward and you can take it out, revealing the internals of this laptop. Now let's remember, this is a laptop from 2008. This is before M.2, NVMe, mSATA, any of those small SSD standards existed. This is a little-known connector called micro SATA. It's almost the size of a full-size SATA SSD, but it was built for laptops just like this. Now this shipped from the factory with an SSD, and I actually don't think you could fit a hard drive in here even if you tried. So 2008, shipping with an SSD is pretty awesome. And this is, in fact, the original SSD, which after having several terabytes written to it is still at 97% health. It is a 120 gigabyte drive from Samsung. Now under this heat pipe lies your Intel chipset and your Core 2 Duo CPU. That's right, this laptop packs a tiny Core 2 Duo. No Pentiums, no Celerons. A Penryn series Core 2 Duo that somehow only consumes 10 watts. This 1.6 gigahertz processor with 3 megabytes of L2 cache is the fastest chip you could get in this laptop. It was also offered with Pentiums and Celerons, but the Core 2 Duo is definitely your best option if you're buying one of these, and it's surprisingly usable even on a modern operating system. Here is your RAM slot. Just one of them, that's right. On the other side of the board, there is 1 gigabyte of DDR3 soldered to the board, and this slot will accept up to 4 gigabytes of DDR3. This laptop is from the later era of Core 2 Duo, which is fantastic because that means it'll take DDR3, because 4 gigabyte DDR2 sticks are ridiculously expensive. It's amazing that they were able to pack the internals of a classic Latitude into such a tiny, tiny little package. Now, of course, with the move to a smaller laptop, you do lose some I/O, but you still get a decent amount. Smart card reader, exhaust for the very small fan, microphone and headphone, combo eSATA and USB 2, and VGA. On the back is your charging port and Kensington lock, and on this side, your RJ45, your USB 2, and IEE 1394. You also get an SD card reader on the side, which is pretty nice. And that is it. Those are all the ports you get. Although arguably on a laptop this small, that's all you'll really need. I doubt many people used this as their main laptop. I guess the idea was if you're traveling like on a business trip, you would pack this instead of your big one because, well, it's tiny. You can fit this in a pocket. Back to the keyboard area. These volume buttons up here are actually touch, which is really interesting. I've never seen anything like this, and I wouldn't expect something to be implemented like this on a over 15-year-old laptop. They're touch sensitive and they light up when you press them as a nice indicator. Now, I don't get why they couldn't just put them on like the function keys. Why not replace numlock with the volume buttons? Because this keyboard doesn't have a numpad. Why would you need numlock? But yeah, it gets really annoying sometimes because you can't hold them down. They only respond once. So if you need to turn down the volume a lot, you have to keep doing that, or respectively that if you want to turn the volume up. So it does get a little irritating if you want to make big changes to the volume, but the coolness factor honestly makes up for that for me. And on the topic of sound, the speaker. Yes, speaker. You get one of them, it's mono, it's right here. Now, old Latitudes aren't quite known for high fidelity audio, but this is impressively bad. I feel like they had to try on purpose to make a speaker this bad. I really wish there was something positive I could say about this speaker, but there honestly is nothing I can say that won't be an insult. Because, I mean, just listen to this thing. Although I will say I have to give it props for being loud, because it is. Although you probably don't want to turn the volume up because what you're hearing doesn't really reflect the music that you're playing. While we have this video playing though, I will mention the screen. It is 1280 by 800, a 16 by 10 aspect ratio that is between 720p and 1366 by 768 in pixel density and overall visual quality. Now, it sounds low when we're used to 1080p or 1440p on laptops nowadays, but on a laptop this small, I'd argue that a smaller, lower resolution screen is actually better. You see, the pixel density on this display is about what you'd get on like a 15-inch higher resolution laptop. So if it was any higher resolution, I honestly don't think text would be all that readable. The display is color accurate, it's clear, it's crisp, it looks really nice for such an old laptop. Also, the lid is very thin. It's, you know, I'm just impressed with the build quality of this thing. I will say though, the contrast is a little bit weird. At times, it can be very washed out. Like web pages with a lot of white, you know, but different shades of white, I feel like they all blend together. So you can fix that with an application that'll let you change your contrast and red, green, blue levels sent to the display. But from the factory, the calibration isn't quite to my liking. That's where I'll leave it. Obviously, this laptop's intended application is light business use, such as word processing, but that doesn't mean it can't do other things as well. The capabilities of its tiny onboard Intel graphics are actually mind-blowing. It's able to smoothly run Unreal Tournament maxed out. Now, admittedly, the low 1280 by 800 resolution is helping it out quite a bit. If the resolution was higher, the Intel graphics would certainly be having a little bit more trouble. But it's doing quite a good job, and the fan still hasn't even turned on. And now for the final thoughts. I love it. I absolutely love it. Part of that is definitely the novelty of having something that looks like a classic 2008 Latitude, but practically fits in my pocket. As I was saying in the intro, I feel like it's the perfect bridge between modern, thin, light laptops with good battery life. This gets 4 to 6 hours, by the way, on a used original battery that's at 80% health, and a nice old repairable laptop with good build quality, which, by the way, this whole thing is aluminum and magnesium, just like a proper full-size Latitude. It can be a little slow, and with the max RAM of 5 gigabytes and its weird little SSD size that's pretty uncommon, there really isn't too much you can upgrade this machine with, but at least the RAM and SSD are upgradable in the first place, which is not something you'll find on a new laptop. I'd call this a solid like 7 out of 10 in my book. It's definitely one that I will keep around and use because, well, I just adore this tiny little, might as well call it a netbook or sub-notebook at this point because of how tiny it is. But that's it for today's video. Not to spoil anything, but tons of old Latitude content coming up in the future, so if this interests you, definitely stay tuned. But that's it for this video. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see you next time.